Hi, and welcome to this month's edition of Chamber Chat TV. I'm Danielle McFadden, President of the Chamber, joined by
Emma Brooks, Director of Member and Community Relations.
And next month, you're going to be the main host.
I'm so nervous, especially since I've been here the past 2 months. I'm out of practice.
Oh, you will be just fine, and then I'll be out of practice because I'll be gone for a couple of months. So I will look a little different next time I'm on, which I'm okay with. We are so excited to be joined by Virginia Crocker-Timmons. She is the president. She's a business and executive coach for Soundboard Advisors. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So nice to see you. And I know that I'm going to ask about the name of your business, but first we'll talk about a little bit about what you do, and then we can talk about why you picked the name for your business.
Sure.
That's so great. So let's talk a little bit about your coaching practice.
Sure. So I work with people who are trying to achieve greater levels of success through business and executive coaching, and I work either one-on-one with individuals or with organizations. I do what I call an inside-out development process, so we focus on the objectives or the results that you're trying to achieve, and then we take you through a process that helps you put in place behavioral changes that help you get to those results in a sustainable way. I use foundational methods or processes in my practice, along with other methods and assessment tools in order to bring people through the process. And I like to think about it in terms of trying to tap into their potential in a greater way. So if you think about like jewels, we all have jewels or nuggets that are kind of buried inside. And what I do is I work through the processes and the methodologies to surface those jewels and help people shine more effectively in their personal and their professional lives, and to help them define purpose and sustain balance in their life.
And I like that you mentioned the personal piece of it too, because I mean, it's how you described it as almost like a wheel, and you need to have everything kind of working for you.
Right. We don't have a personal life and a work life. We have one life. So when you can have those two things in balance, you're happier and you wind up being more productive at work.
Because I'm sure when one is out of balance, the other one must be a little bit too.
Yeah, it causes stress points and other things.
So what kind of challenges do you see in the companies that you work with?
Whether I'm working with a one-person company or a many-person company, I think the biggest challenge that I hear repeatedly comes down to the need or the desire for cultural change. The conversation often starts at a symptom. So like a symptom might be employee turnover, or leaders or supervisors who are new to their role and need to grow in it, or maybe they're senior in their role and they need to be able to change to a changing business climate. Other symptoms might be things like an eroding sales or customer base, or conversely, a sales or customer base that's exploding, and the company needs to be able to change to keep up with it and capitalize on it. And when we start to really drill down into the symptoms, oftentimes what it comes down to is that the business leader needs or wants some type of cultural change in order to address those symptoms.
And it's interesting that you talked about a business exploding as being kind of an issue, but if your business is growing faster than you plan for, you need to kind of readjust and take a look at that as well.
Absolutely.
And I like how you use the word symptom instead of problem. It sounds much more positive, and it's like something that can be changed and fixed instead of just something that keeps continuing.
And anybody can benefit from working with a coach. Everybody should have a coach.
Yeah, I mean, I use a coach. So it helps me be better and grow, and it helps me with my business as well. So.
And it's the accountability factor too.
Right.
And having somebody that's not in the day-to-day of it, on the outside looking in.
Yep,
Have
absolutely.
a much clearer mind about things. So how can you help a business work through a cultural change?
That's a really good question. So if you think about context for a minute, does it make sense if I say that culture is like a collection of patterns that have to do with how you behave, how you think, and what you believe? So if you think about the patterns of behavior, thinking, and belief, oftentimes what I'll do is I'll start by looking at strategy. So do you have a strategy? If you do, does it need to be updated? If you've got a solid strategy in place, that's great. now we start looking at people. Do you have the right people with the right skills and the right attitudes who understand the strategy and their role in implementing it and carrying the organization through the change? And then we look at processes and systems. So do you have the right structures and processes in place, or are they set up such that they're getting in your way of implementing the strategy? When you have those three things in sync, strategy, people, and process, the organization is better aligned and more optimally positioned to work through that change. I find that in my discussions with business leaders, we most often start with strategy or people. So,
And people can make or break a company.
Absolutely.
For sure. So it makes sense that that's where you start many times.
right, right.
Can you say more about strategy development and how that plays into the organizational culture?
Sure. So if we keep in mind the culture being related to behavior, thinking, and beliefs, when I start a strategic planning process with a company, we look at three elements that are core to defining the basic business foundation and philosophy. So the first is vision. Where do you want to be in the long term, typically looking 5 to 15 years out? The second piece of that is values. What are the values of the company? And values become very critical in driving culture because they guide your decision-making systems. They're your principles. It's about how you're going to decide to move forward or what you might decide to walk away from if it's not in concert with your values. And then the third piece of it is the mission, which is usually a nearer term statement of purpose looking like 12 to 18 months out. And when we help a company develop their mission statement or that purpose statement, we also help them work through understanding what are the external things in their environment that affect the strategy. What are, things like the marketplace, competitors. What are the internal things in the environment, the people, the buildings, the facilities, the processes that affect the strategy. And we factor all that into the mission statement and the strategic statements that follow it. So when you have a clear articulation of your vision, your values, and your mission, people can then align around that, and that will help drive behavior and belief systems and how they think about things. And then the next part of the strategic plan, we take it from those three strategic things now down into the more tactical goals and actions that you need to actually implement to realize the strategy. And that's where the rest of the people in the organization and their development tends to come into play.
And how far are people looking out in terms of your strategic plan? Is it usually a 3-year or?
Oftentimes it's 3 years. It's harder to go beyond that because it's harder to see
Absolutely.
that. But when you make it too short, then you might not be looking far enough. So it's usually 2 to 3 years.
And how often should you be looking at your plan? Should it be on your wall?
I say every day because your plan basically translates down to goals and actions that go in your planner, right?
Yeah.
So it really should kind of be in front of your nose every day.
And that's what's nice about working with you is that you make sure that it is.
Right.
And every time that they meet with you, they have to come, I'm sure, and report back.
And I follow up and I help them with accountabilities and also working through any issues they might have or successes that they have. So.
And I'm sure you have such a different perspective from being on the outside of the business, and you must ask them things that they wouldn't even think of on their own normally.
Yeah. I view that as a key part of my role.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, how can a business work on people development and engage to positively affect culture? I like that people development.
People development, yep. So it comes back to aligning your strategy with your resources, where your resources include your processes and your people. And what business leaders need to do is create an environment where the people not only understand the need for change, but they embrace it and they really want to make it happen. And there's a lot of factors that play into creating that environment. There's things like, do you have a compelling vision? Does your leadership team exemplify and model the behaviors that go along with the words that you wrote, right? How are your communication methods and your communication content, and is that effective? And one other key factor in that is having an environment where employees feel that they can implement the skills that they have and that they can develop new skills. And when we work on that skills development, we typically work across 3 critical elements. One is the goal setting that's aligned with the organizational goals. The second is the skills and knowledge, going back to the surfacing the jewel and the potential, the skills you have and the skills we help you develop. And then the third area is attitude. And when you're trying to effect a change and motivate people towards that change, attitude is the most effective method of motivation. There's other ways to motivate. So you can motivate by fear. If you don't do A, B is going to happen, right? You can motivate by incentive. Hey, if you do X, I'm going to give you Y. Well, those work sometimes, but they're usually not permanent and they're transient. Attitudinal motivation tends to be more permanent and more lasting. So when you can then start to combine the alignment of people with your strategy, including that vision, mission, and values, with the skills development, combining the goals, the skills, and the attitude development, you start to position the organization to move it forward to the change that you want.
And I'm sure it's motivating for an employee to know that their boss or employer wants to kind of pull their best attributes and utilize their skills.
Yep.
And just makes for a positive environment for everyone.
Right. Yep.
And as you're talking, I'm thinking as a parent, I'm like, okay, incentivize, threaten. So I'm going to have to go with the third, I think. Especially since you said those are short-term things. Let's talk a little bit about the business name, Soundboard Advisors, and how you came up with that. I love that.
Sure. So I like piano music. And if you think about the soundboard in a piano, it's where the vibrations on the inside of the instrument are transformed to the music that we hear on the outside. And so in much the same way, I work with my clients through inside-out development to help transform their business performance in their lives.
So we have a few minutes left. Let's talk a little bit about if somebody wanted to work with you, what that process would be like.
You can reach out to me over email or phone or through my website, which is www.soundboardadvisors.com. My email is virginia@soundboardadvisors.com, and my phone is 978-618-3807. And what that looks like is a conversation to start. I meet with you and understand what your objectives are and what you're trying to accomplish. And we take it from there in terms of deciding what's the most appropriate process or approach or assessments to use to help bring you through the process.
And while we just have a minute left, you do have some great tools that you use for assessments. What are some of the tools that you use?
I have a set of 3 personal assessments that help measure how you prefer to behave and communicate, what things you value or what motivates you, and how you use your natural attributes in terms of thinking and make decisions. And I also have an organizational assessment that helps you go in and diagnose whether everybody's singing on the same sheet of music and where are the vulnerable points that we could work on to make the organization stronger.
I love
I know.
singing on the same
The music references throughout.
I know, it's great.
It is.
Well, we always love having you on.
Thank
we always
you. I
learn something
appreciate
new and
it.
exciting. And if you're a local business and you're looking to take it to the next level, everybody could use a coach. So
Yes.
definitely give
Thank you.
Virginia a call.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back. You're watching Chamber Chat TV.